I want to bring in Mike Breen. He's the president and CEO of Human Rights First. Mike, thanks for being here. So do you have an estimate right now of how many people still urgently need to get out of Afghanistan?
Thank you for having me and for covering this. We're tracking at least tens of thousands of Afghan allies and others who are still in harm's way and still in Afghanistan and urgently need to be evacuated. That includes those who assisted the United States, of course, directly, but it also includes a wide swath of Afghan civil society, NGO leaders, women, LGBTQIA community members, members of civil society, all of whom, or many of whom, qualify for priority visas under U.S. law and are being tracked by the State Department. But they're still on the ground. They're still under threat. Our information from speaking with many of them and communicating with them is that the Taliban is going house to house looking for them. So this mission is not over. And as the leader of Human Rights First, I speak for a large coalition of people who continue to remain committed to this mission, but also as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. I was taught we don't leave anybody behind. A lot of us took great risks to keep that vow, and we've got to keep it as a country.
And Mike, I've heard that sentiment resonating with Americans, and yet there is still the difficulty of no U.S. boots on the ground anymore, of those evacuation flights being organized by the U.S. military having ended at this point. And further, we're hearing stories of people there who, especially who are family members or have some relationship to the United States, burning those documents out of fear of retribution and fear for their lives under Taliban control. How much more difficult does it make that process of trying to assist those tens of thousands, as you say, of people who we still owe an obligation to?
Much more difficult. And it's deeply unfortunate that we withdrew from Afghanistan, that the administration decided to do that, not having initiated an evacuation much earlier. Certainly Human Rights First was among many organizations that very publicly called for an evacuation many months ago and developed a plan for that. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, so here we are. But we're seeing in Afghanistan, as we'll see around the world always, that when people are under threat, when people face these desperate situations, they will do everything and anything you can imagine to take care of themselves and their families. They will try to get to safety through any means you can think of. And so all of us in the NGO community, full power of the United States government, our diplomatic power, we need to support that effort and make it as safe for them as possible. They're going to do it anyway because their lives are at risk. And then once they're here, we need to make sure that we welcome them with dignity. There are urgent needs to meet for the many who are showing up in the United States and around the world. They're going to need a little bit of help as they get their feet under them and find a job and find a place to live. These are entrepreneurial people. They're going to be great neighbors and contribute to our society, but we got to make sure that the beginning is good for them. And so there are urgent needs that we need to meet. There is a piece of bipartisan legislation that Human Rights First supports and in fact helped craft that's been introduced by Democrat Seth Moulton and a Republican Don Bacon that meets some of those needs. So Congress is paying attention to this, and we really need to call on the administration, call on all our leaders to make sure that we get the next part of this evacuation right.
Mike, I want to dig deeper into how we help resettle those Afghan refugees here in the United States. But before we move off of the topic of people who are still stuck in Afghanistan, is there anything more that any of us who are watching or having this conversation with you right now can do to try and help those people who are still fearful for their lives? What happens now?
Sure. So we've put out a number of resources in Pashto and Dari, the local languages, that help people understand how to set up a safe house, how to stay secure, how to cover their digital signature. So there's been a great output from civil society trying to help people stay safe. But this really hinges on getting the borders open. Most of the border crossings, if not all of them, are closed. On getting some of these airports working, like Mazar Sharif, so people can fly out. And you've reported there are a lot of people in aircraft, in fact, stuck on the ground right now. And this really ultimately, I think, is going to require humanitarian corridors to be set up. But at the very least, the United States needs to leverage its full diplomatic power to get the airports open and to get the border crossings around Afghanistan open. There are many who leave over land if those border crossings open. We need to give them the opportunity, the chance to do that, especially since we can facilitate their onward travel to other countries or to the United States.
And Mike, as promised, I want to double back over to talking about people who are facing difficulty being resettled here. Talk to us a little bit about those difficulties that Afghan refugees may face while going through processing that's required to begin a life in the U.S. And do you feel that there's currently a solid plan in place to help integrate Afghan refugees into U.S. communities and make sure that they have what they need?
Well, the good news there is that we have great infrastructure to draw on. That there is a large community of nonprofits at the national and local level that exist to help welcome people to the United States with dignity and help them begin their lives here as Americans, as our neighbors. And we can leverage that. And the White House, has begun to leverage that. There's also a vast outpouring of concern and action in the veterans community. And it's important that the White House, they've begun to do this. It's really important that they continue to tap into that resource at the community level and at the national level. Unfortunately, we're seeing, I think some pretty cynical attempts to stir up some xenophobia and nativism against these people, many of whom have bled alongside our troops in combat. But nevertheless, the voices of veterans and others in our communities are really important. And finally, these folks have a lot of legal needs. They're coming in with a wide variety of mechanisms in our immigration system. There's a lot of inequality in terms of the benefits and the support that they'll receive, again, to get their lives started once they get here. This is not a long-term thing, but people need help to get started as Americans. And that those benefits are uneven. So that's why congressional action is necessary so that those specifically who come in under humanitarian parole get some of the same benefits that those who would come in under a special immigrant visa may receive or other programs. Finally, if those in the legal community especially want to step up and help in this moment, Human Rights First and many of our allies have resources and ways to do that. So if you're an attorney, if you work with a law firm and want to give them a call, we can use all the help we can get. We have everything we need, you'll need to get started. So please contact us or another legal services organization. We can truly use you.
As you say, there is bipartisan support. One of the few things that Republicans and Democrats seem to be in agreement about is this important issue. Mike, Breen, thank you.
Thank you.